Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the final webinar for this week in our webinar series, which is all about China market entry. We started the week off talking about how to write a business plan and financial plan, what actually that entails, especially for the Chinese market, and what additional considerations you have to make or to have to put into your business plan when talking about China. On Tuesday, we talked about the 6 ways of doing business without having an entity in China. And yesterday we talked about how to find partners in China, how to vet partners in China, and the biggest mistakes that foreign investors make when collaborating with partners, whether that be distributors, sales agents, or even licensees, franchisees, etc. In the final episode of today, I've got a wonderful guest speaker, Manfred, who's on. From Steinkellner China Search, who is going to be sharing with us, or we're actually going to be doing this presentation together actually, on how to get the most out of your China market entry in the first 3 years, which are usually the trickiest years. And one of the goals we hope you leave today's session with is eliminating the most common obstacles and roadblocks that might occur for your business in those first 3 years. Before we start today's session, we have a couple of people that have already joined us. So for Manfred's benefit, and for those of you that are new to me, there are a couple of names that are new, we would love to know who you are and what stage of development you are in for the Chinese market. So if you could let us know whether you are a newbie to China, a startup in China, or an experienced China hand. Newbies to China are those of you that have found opportunities or are looking for opportunities in the Chinese market and you're in the stage of evaluation. Those of you that are startups in China, you have maybe transacted with China for a period of 1 to 3 years, and you're evaluating how to grow that business even further. And experienced China hands would be those of you have been in business in China for a number of years, probably already have entities in China that you're transacting with, and are just here to get a couple of fresh ideas on how to grow your business. So if you are a newbie, if you're a startup, if you're an experienced China hand, do type it in. Just opening up the chat box. So Steven's a newbie, Magdalena is a startup. Steven and Magdalena, I both know. Those are the 2 that have popped in. It'd be great if you guys could give us feedback. I just want to highlight here, the best part of these webinars are the interactions with the audience and the participants. So please don't forget to participate and interact. Which leads me to the technical side of the slide. Just from a technical standpoint, I've just recently switched from GoToWebinar to Zoom. So I'm still trying to figure out all the functions and buttons on the Zoom system. This is also the first time I've got a guest speaker with me on Zoom. So Manfred and I did do a test run on the different ways of sharing screens and hosting and whatnot. Please bear with us as we operate that. If you guys run into any technical issues on your side, please just note, my biggest suggestion would be to log back into the system. If Manfred and I run into any issues, our goal is to log back off and then log back in as well. It will take probably about 30 seconds to 1 minute for us to be able to do that. The whole point of today's session is to highlight a tool that Manfred has developed to help companies get kickstarted in the Chinese market in the right way. We're going to be explaining that tool. I'm going to be used as a case study on that tool so you guys can actually see what it looks like. And we're going to highlight a little bit the problems that we see in the market, why Manfred has developed that tool, and what we hope that you get out of this in the end. And we'll highlight also a couple of case studies of success stories of people who've used this. Please use this time wisely. This is your time spent, so do interact with us. Use the Q&A section or the chat section in the control panel, and we will answer all questions or comments that you might have at the Q&A. So for those of you that are new, just a little bit about myself. My name's Christina Kohler-Coluccia. I'm the head of business advisory at Woodburn Accountants and Advisors. I'm one of the leading experts on inbound investment into China. 100% of my clients are foreign investors that are looking to go into the Hong Kong and Chinese market. I've got 17 years of on-the-ground experience in corporate services and corporate compliance. And I've helped over 500 international companies with their market entry strategies, their implementations into the market. And then for me now, the most fun part of the business is helping them to actually focus on the growth. I'm a creator of the China Roadmap Methodology, the China Incorporation Blueprint, and the China Profit Accelerator, which are all webinars that I conduct on a rotation on a monthly basis. And if you're interested to learn more about these methodologies and what to focus on in your businesses in China, please do subscribe to them. They're complimentary. At the end of the session, I'll provide my details and how to reach me. Manfred will also give his details in ways of reaching out to him. But it is on the slides just so you can see, but I'll put that into the chat section at the end. So what I want to start off with today before we hit on Manfred's presentation is this orientation and alignment workshop. And it's a tool, basically. Manfred approached me with it and said, Christina, do you think any of your clients would be interested in this? Because the biggest problem that we are seeing is companies who are struggling to go from strategy to execution. And I'm seeing that as well. And so I actually told Manfred, you know, could I try out your tool? Could I be one of your examples of seeing what this actually means and what this entails? And I do a lot of that work internally already, but I loved the formatting of how he developed it. And I do know that a lot of companies who don't have existing China experience have trouble figuring out this roadmap to create. And this is exactly what the workshop entails. And Manfred, I think, has developed it beautifully and very specific to the Chinese market. So we're going to run that through you, and I'm going to be the case study to it to show you what questions you should be raising to really make a 3-year roadmap for your China journey. Now, how I wanted to start off this presentation was basically by saying, and this is what I'm seeing currently right now, I am getting an influx of companies where their China projects have been greenlit. They've been predominantly held back due to COVID in 2020. They're starting a fresh new fiscal year in 2021. And basically the decision makers are saying, we've got to be in China. We need to be in that market. It is the market that is growing. Let's go. Then comes the roadblocks. And companies are saying, okay, I feel like there's so many obstacles in my way getting there. I don't even know how to evaluate how to get into this market. I don't even know how to go from a strategy that I've developed to actually executing that and implementing it. And as a result, the company is staying in this orange light category, or sometimes even in this red light category, where they know they have to be in China, they want to be in China, they've given the go-ahead to be in China, and they just don't know how to take that next step from red to orange to green and push forward. So I wanted to highlight a little bit about the problems that I see as an external party from companies that I'm collaborating with. And again, Manfred, put in your 2 cents when you see these examples. This is coming from me as to the problems of companies going from strategy to execution. And if you guys can relate, please do type that into the Q&A, because I would love to understand if these problems exist within your organization.
I mean, also to be fair, right, and to kind of start going a bit into a dialogue here with you, Christina, is also, it is tricky, right? Especially, I mean, the two of us, we've been into this game now for what, about 20 years each. So we've seen a bit of this, we've seen a bit of that. If maybe you've only been to China 1 or 2 times, or maybe now you got the green light, but you've never been to China, and then to, you know, push ahead with all those things is not easy, I guess. No.
It isn't. And I guess this leads me to the first problem, is you have so many options in the directions that you want to go into the Chinese market. As I highlighted on Tuesday's webinar, you know, I was highlighting 6 different ways of getting into China without even establishing an entity. But my God, there are more. There are so many different ways of how you can piece that puzzle together. And one of the biggest issues that I'm seeing is that you might be working for an organization where there are a number of decision makers in relation to the Chinese market, and everybody has their own opinion on how to direct that strategy, right? What we need is a unified strategy, and we need everybody to be on the same page. Otherwise, you are not going to move from red light to green light. It's impossible. And what I'm seeing by having these differing opinions is that people are trying to stick that conversation within the organization versus moving that conversation to external parties to get opinions from different people to advise on what is the right strategy for you. The beauty of this tool or this workshop that Manfred has created is that the first criteria is that all decision makers have to be on the call. Otherwise, there's no point in doing this workshop. The goal of the workshop is to get everyone on board, to give their opinions, to put pen to paper during the workshop, to see how you can create an alignment. Manfred?
Because it's quite natural, right? If you look at organizations, I mean, as a general manager, you will be having different perspective, different goals as the head of sales, or even to go one level higher as the owner of an organization. So it's very natural to have these different opinions there, but I guess especially if the people involved don't have too much experience, especially then it's important to label it at what it is, as an opinion, and not necessarily, as kind of the holy grail and the truth itself. Because we both know it, right? We've seen it, that there's so many interesting, even strange ideas that are in people's heads, which, might have been true at one point of time in the last 30 years, but which aren't anymore. And I think that needs to be cleared and aired out, and to come to this point where you have one direction.
Correct.
You need to be moving in one direction, right?
And I also want to highlight that opinions don't have to be wrong. It's just, you need to, the point of this conversation today is to look at 3 years down the line. Where do you want to be 3 years down the line? You have to create a phased approach. So you might have a decision maker who wants to go gung-ho and go full force from day one, and somebody else who wants to take a little bit of a slower approach. It's a matter of combining those two goals into a phased approach over 3 years, where you might go slow initially, and then as you build confidence, you go more gung-ho. But that's the beauty of this workshop, is looking at a 3-year timeline of where you want to be. The next one is fear to make a decision. And this is actually really interesting, because I wrote an ebook about the 10 biggest mistakes that companies make in China, and the number 10 one was fear. China is an unknown market. You always hear the war stories in the media or from people in your network of what they've done wrong, what mistakes they've made. And it does develop an instinct within you to say, oh my God, I have to think twice about making this certain decision. The issue that I see is that people have a fear to make just very simple decisions, like, which service provider do you want to use? Just start with one. If you've spoken to 5, it means you've got 4 other backups if the first one doesn't work. So start with one. If you don't start, you're not going to get anywhere. And if you're taking 6 months to make a decision on which service provider to use, and I don't mean this in relation to Woodburn or Manfred, it's for anything, whether it's a media agency, whether it's a PR agency, whether it's a law firm, an accounting firm, it could be whatever provider out there. You have to at some point make a decision, right? And move forward.
I think that is an extremely important one. I've always seen, China as a very hot potato, both in terms of the upside as well as on the downside. We understand that, you don't want to, create frictions on your potential strategic future market. But I completely agree with you, Christina, there that, you need to get moving, because the Chinese world is just one where, it just doesn't work if you keep on planning forever and don't leave any resources or time for execution. You actually need to get moving. And yes, that might sometimes also mean that maybe you've not created the right one, but you need to move, and also, to learn with those moves within the headquarters, within the organization, whether you're actually, making the things right or what you need to adapt. As we've seen the other day, Christina, with one of our kind of shared clients, it's not the best idea to delegate all these decisions to your Chinese team in case you start building one or you already have one. You also want to, within the headquarters, be charge of it and to a certain degree. Exactly. Right.
So I'm going to bring up a case study because it's very, very current. I actually have a client who has no intention of doing business in China right now. But I was so impressed by him because he approached me saying, I at least want to register my trademark. And I said, fantastic. And he approached me in the summer of 2020. He still hasn't progressed, and we're in February 2021. And now as we are doing the application, what have we found? Somebody has already registered the mark in the class that he wants. And now we have to go through an opposition filing, which is going to cost him more than if he would have just applied in summer last year, right? But he was waiting and making a decision. And, you know, I don't want to go to China right now. Do I have to do the trademark? Yes, you should have all done the trademark a year ago. I mean, this is the number one thing you should be thinking about. So it was not necessarily, and fear is something I want to emphasize because I see that a lot, but it's also the indecisiveness. Should I not? I'm not sure. Just do it, right? You're approaching people to talk about China for a reason, and it's a market then of interest.
I guess if we take that, you know, that kind of that indecisiveness and where it comes from, I think it's also important to highlight that, you know, quite often European or Western organizations are just slower in their, you know, in their progress.
I'm not used to it.
And I guess, you know, we have to take that in mind and also accept the fact and the consequences of that, because things here moving a bit slower. I'm completely with Christina, you know, make up your mind, you know, talk to all the people, talk to externals, talk to other people who've been there, who've done it, talk to partners who run a successful business at the moment, and then make up your mind and then go for it. And not, you know, wait until you have the perfect plan, because reality will change in China.
Absolutely. The next problem that I see is a misunderstanding of how the legal system works in China. So again, this is a very current case that I'm working on right now, where somebody has approached me to actually incorporate their entity in China. And you know, the first thing that I ask is, let's have a conversation. I need to know a little bit about the background of what you're planning to do to advise you on the right structure. And I got no response. And then a week later, I followed up, and the response was, oh, I don't think there's any point in discussing with you just yet, because we're still negotiating internally who's going to be in the corporate management of the Chinese company. And there's uncertainty about who should be holding what roles. If there is any uncertainty about what's happening internally in your organization and what decisions have to be made, you need to talk to an external party so you can have complete transparency about what those roles mean. Being in a corporate management role for a Chinese entity automatically brings fear in a lot of Westerners, because they're hearing stories of people going to jail, of people not being able to enter the Chinese market. They're hearing all of these worst case scenarios. But what you need to understand is the bullet point form list of what those responsibilities are associated with each of those roles. And then you can actually appoint the right people. But making a discussion internally without understanding the actual legal system that is occurring in the Chinese market, I actually openly told the individual, you're going to have to come back to me later on, and probably you're going to change the structure after you learn about what the legal system actually means. People are trying to make decisions before they have clarity about how things work in China and how the system functions in China. And you need to talk to as many people first before you can have those discussions internally about how you want to set up your business model and how you want to go in the market. Manfred, do you want to add anything on that?
No, absolutely. It's learning, and it's especially the clarity, because with China there comes so much fear, so much stuff that we've heard somewhere from somebody who knew somebody at some point of time. And I think, you know, not just China, every other international market as well, you know, just learn about it, just go ask the questions. I'm absolutely with Christina, you know, these internal discussions, they're extremely hard when you don't have the facts on the table.
Right.
And they become extremely easy if you go to somebody like Christina, who gives you the fact either in talking or in writing, and then you look at the facts and then you try and figure out, because normally, you know, it's also one thing leads to the other, right? I mean, it's not just done with on the legal representative, it's also the question, I guess, what are we trying to do there? Who will then really be in charge? Who will really also do something? Who will fly out to China?
Who will be the decision makers, right?
The decision makers is a back and forth. It's not just, saying, oh, well, put down my name there. That's maybe the start, but definitely not the end of it.
Right, exactly. The next one is reliance on an exclusive partner. And this is something that I've highlighted in the last 2 sessions, all about having this partnership relationship. By partners, I'm meaning everybody who could potentially be a partner. That could be in the actual business, so distributors, sales agents, licensees, whomever, but it could also be third parties, whether it's logistics providers, TP partners, whether it's HR professionals, whether it's accounting providers, it could be anybody. Having this reliance on an exclusive partner can actually halt your business. And one story that I'd like to share is basically of a company that is looking to set up a licensing relationship in China, working exclusively with one partner who has made tremendous promises, but has shown over time 0 output. Now you have to make a trigger for yourself saying whether a partner will bring something to the relationship or not. And if they don't, you need to put a time frame on that to say, we've got to find other channels or other solutions or other business partners. Because with this reliance comes fear again to search for something fresh and something new. And you're not going to get forward. I mean, what we want to achieve is growth over a 3-year period. If a partner is the roadblock, you've got to find other solutions and have backup plans in place.
And if I may, Christina, there we already start. I mean, some organizations out there, they believe, that's where to start. That's the normal thing. And I mean, yes, I agree. It's, it can be a decent and a reasonable start. However, we're talking about a country with 1.3 billion people. We're talking about a country where essentially something like from St. Petersburg in Russia down to Lisbon. And now you're saying that you have one partner in St. Petersburg, and that partner is covering all of China with a team of 3 people. So I'm just saying, I'm seeing a lot of funny things where I say, look, I find that a bit hard to believe. So right. Just about this, partnership thing, what I'm trying to say here is think 2 times, 3 times, 4 times about what makes sense. We have some organizations out there that are having, I don't know, maybe they're in the oil and gas industry, as well as in mining, as well as in pharma, which is 3 completely different segments. Now, you might find partners that, have extremely good connections in the oil and gas industry, which might to a certain degree be kind of northeastern China focused, whereas mining then might go into Inner Mongolia, also towards Tibet and other areas. And then pharma would have different locations. So I'm just saying, depending on what you're doing, what you're trying to achieve, it might just be quite obvious actually to not talk with one partner. It's just their reflex in China is to say, well, we want exclusivity. And our reflex might also be to say, well, it's probably easier if we just educate one. But again, St. Petersburg to Lisbon. If an Italian company is telling me that they can handle all of Europe, then I'd really want to see some trust. And the same thing from a company that is based in Austria or that's based in Germany, because that's quite a region.
Well, I would want to see proof.
Exactly.
Show me proof that you have that ability.
Proof,
right?
Yeah, that's the point. Exactly.
Another issue that I'm seeing is a lot of people now are looking for investors. They're looking for financing and funding to get into the Chinese market because maybe they don't have that financial resource on hand. So they're looking externally for investors to participate in the project. And the issue is when you get investors on board, they might have very different goals and objectives in terms of reaching the Chinese market. So similarly, where you are a company and you've got a board of directors that you need to have aligned, you also will need an alignment amongst investors to make sure that there is a clear objective, a clear goal, and everybody is in alignment on that goal and objective. That discussion should happen actually before the investor comes on board, but sometimes there's miscommunication and misunderstanding. But this is again why I think the workshop is a fantastic tool to be utilized in situations like this, where you might have 3, 4, 5 very different investors all investing an array of different things. One might be financing, one might be tech, one might be knowledge base. And they all, again, have different goals and objectives. You need everyone to be aligned in order to push this project forward. Otherwise, you will get, again, I don't want anybody to stop focusing on growth and the goal that you want to achieve in 3 years because of administrative issues, miscommunication, misunderstanding. This just takes away from the goal of hitting what that 3-year mark should be.
I mean, especially with investors, we've got one client in Northern Germany that is investor backed from a European investment group that is acting pan-European level. You know, as Christina said, there's different objectives. There's also different speeds. Normally, if you have investors, then, you know, the importance of meeting financial goals actually increases. But even if not, the importance of, you know, accountability and of setting certain targets and of reaching them normally changes. And that is something where we've used the tool, but also I can completely agree with Christina. It's extremely important, but let me also touch on one different aspect, which we're seeing a lot is, you know, you have some very interesting product or maybe technology product going into China, and then you're kind of putting, you know, the know-how, and the Chinese are putting the money, so to speak. Also there, you know, there will be definitely a misalignment of the interests. It's just that at that point of time, intentionally, these different interests will not be put on the table. So again, there, whether you use the alignment workshop, whether you talk with Christina, whether you talk with myself, but, you know, get some ideas, and especially get some questions from outsiders to kind of see if this is really the only option, point A, and also point B, if this is the smartest option to move ahead.
So now I'm going to hand over to Manfred, and he's going to start his presentation. I just have to make him a post. 1 second. There you go, Manfred. I'll stop my share.
Super. So I'm just going to go through a couple of slides. Can we see them, Christina?
Yes.
Yeah, perfect. I'm just going to go through a couple of slides that we've put together for, for the things that that we're doing and for that tool that we develop. The whole terminology that we created, that it's, you know, we're using, call it make away. From the executive search perspective, this is kind of what we do. We crown kings. We put people into the right positions. The key thing for China really is, you know, one thing is to make the right decisions, but the other thing is also, you know, for the right reasons. Different organizations have different priorities, different strategies, different things. You know, we're dealing with organizations that want to get into China because they want to start. We're also dealing with organizations. The other day, we were doing that workshop for an organization that is, you know, making 40% of their revenue in China, where actually we're doing something different. We're talking about, you know, how can we at least slightly decrease that relevance of the Chinese market for the organization, because, you know, nobody wants to be dependent, right? Neither in a relationship nor in a business perspective. So just to start up with a couple of differences, I think, Christina, you like that slide from the other day, so we made sure it's in there. And maybe if you can, you know, help me a little bit on this one to also highlight the things that you believe is important. This is a slide that we developed for a scenario where you are already in China, you already have an organization in China, and there is, you know, different realities and different needs, essentially. Yeah. So on the left side we find China, on the right side we find HQ. From HQ perspective, maybe the term of planning security, of predictability, is for a German organization, a UK organization, or generally speaking, a Western organization, extremely important. From the Chinese perspective, you know, is really about speed, speed, speed. is about flexibility, be that product development, be that service time, be that, caring about or reacting to changing realities. I mean, I've been in project management for projects up to 100 million euros in China. And, there we found that really it's not just about having that superior product. It's sometimes the European perspective that we have. My product is so good, for sure, you will want to have it. Yes, you can think that. But just because you think that doesn't necessarily mean that it's actually true, or that your Chinese customer cares about it, because, they have, I don't know, 1, 2, 3 issues that they want solved. And, maybe for them, not just the product, but also the way you communicate, the way you care about them, the way you make sure that their issue is actually being solved will decide upon your success. And not just to say, this is a high quality product. That's not the only thing. Christina, you want to hop in?
Well, I'm going to hop in from a China market entry perspective. So when you are going into the Chinese market, if you don't set up your own entity, or if you don't hire your own staff, you are still going to have to work with partners on the ground that are going to help you facilitate your business. So what do those partners need in China in order to push your business? It's all of those points on the left side: fast response time, flexibility, perseverance in negotiations, trust, which obviously does not come from day one. It's developed over time. But that is what your partners will need in China to be able to push your company forward, or to push your products forward, to push your services forward. Obviously, everybody who's going into the Chinese market from an HQ perspective and from the decision makers is, we're scared. I mean, we are going to be investing capital into this project. We don't want this capital to go to waste. We're not in a period of time, especially because of COVID, where we can waste dollars. We have to make sure that every cent that we spend is for the right thing. So of course, there is time going to be spent on a small, simple decision. You need to get over that. At some point, decisions have to be made quickly. And if you want your project to move forward and go from red to orange to green, you're going to have to realize the pace of speed in China, the pace of life, the pace of negotiations. And I do want people to realize that they should still have control over all of these decisions and make them wisely. But you can only do that with partners externally that you can get advice from, and make sure you're on the right track.
And I mean, if we play it this way, Christina, if I may come in again, if we're going in the direction of market entry, one of the key things really is this attitude of learning and a focus on information, or put differently, a focus on data.
Yes.
What I really do not believe in nearly no setup, or actually in no setup that I've encountered at all, is to go in blind. Select a partner, give them the product, let them do whatever they do, their magic. Hardly have any conversations with them, hardly meet, hardly whatnot, and then be surprised that things are not moving in the direction you want.
Exactly.
Now, some of you will point out, well, he's exaggerating. The strange thing that happens with China is people do stuff that nobody would ever think about doing here in Europe. If an Austrian company goes into Germany, they would never dream of doing the things that Christina and me are kind of seeing on a daily basis with European companies going into China. And most of these things also, they're not done intentionally. Part of it is fear, part of it is, different cultural habits, part of it is, I believed this and that, but actually it was a different thing, and so on and so forth. So coming back to it, have that conversation. So for example, if you're selecting a distribution partner, go into kind of, interval meetings, which, I guess at the beginning should be at least once a month, to kind of also,
if not weekly,
if not more often,
have a call every week. Even if it's a 10-minute call, it's a catch-up call to maintain that relationship. That's my feeling on it.
I guess it's two things from my perspective. The one thing definitely is the relationship, and even the newbies, I think, among us, they understand and know that this relationship topic is important everywhere, but it's much more important in China than it is in different areas, or at least this is my personal experience. Point A, point B, you're coming with something into the Chinese market. You need to get an idea of, if they are trying to help you sell it, what kind of challenges do they have?
Exactly.
I mean, don't be so naive to believe that there's no competitors. Maybe that's the information that you believe, that you start from the beginning. There is no competitors in China, which in 99 out of 100 cases is really not true. There will always be a competitor. Maybe you don't perceive them as one, but there will be a competitor for your product. And even be it as technologically advanced as, going to Moon, Mars and beyond. And, this is what you need. This is what we mean with open exchange of information. You need that feedback, and you need that feedback incorporated in your, so to speak, in your data landscape, and then see, well, what do we do with that? We have a great product. It is awesome, but nobody's buying it because we're 30% more expensive than the others. Or we have a great beer, but nobody's drinking it because there is already 150 other beers in that, supermarket for foreigners in China. You need that feedback, because otherwise, if you're blind, how will you actually decide if proceeding or if how to adapt is smart, or what kind of adaptations need to be made in order to actually, come to a success in China? And I guess, that's there. And obviously, in a normal year, we would say, fly out to China, go meet clients, go have a picture. Obviously, these days is different, but again, I see with my clients that are on critical projects, yes, they are sending people out to China. Technical organizations even send out critical maintenance people to China, because, service is extremely necessary. I mean, in the past, we've even recalled technicians for flights home for Europe for Christmas, because the Chinese, as we all know, don't have Christmas. They have Chinese New Year, which is about 2 months later or a month and a half later. Well, most of them, honestly, they don't care about Christmas. What they care is that they have a technical system or anything that's not working, and they want service. You can't provide that service. Chances are very big that you'll be losing that client, or at least that your reputation will take a hit. All right, so I mean, there's a couple of things, but I guess in order to kind of arrive at a point of planning security that you have, that how will things develop, I personally believe you'll need facts. Now, getting the facts from China is not so easy. I think there's many ways, but the two, I guess, most important ones is, one is more like the relationship based, where you really take care of the distributor, your friends in China, your colleagues in China, and they'll give you information that you might not get kind of, formally. Is extremely practical, doesn't take a lot of effort. You just need to look at the people and care for them and build a real and authentic relationship. The other one, I think, which especially these days is also something you should think about, is simply, make sure that you have IT systems in place that you get the data automatically. When somebody in China needs to do 27 steps in order to fill out the Excel that you would like to have filled out, chances are extremely high that either you will not get that Excel, or that Excel will not have all the information. And when you ask them, of course, they will not tell you it's been too much work to do it. They will more tell you, in China, it's not common too. In China, we don't, you'll get some of those phrases where, well, normally that's not the truth. At least this is my kind of experience in most of the cases. Christina, you're having a laugh. Want to share a story?
I am, because I'm actually going through a recruitment process right now for a finance manager, because the existing one doesn't want to fill out these Excel sheets for the head office. So they're trying to find a replacement who is willing to fill out those Excel sheets, versus trying to find simpler ways technologically through the ERP system or accounting system to be able to get that information faster. So And I think this is what people need to realize, is that from a software system and a online tool system, China is extremely advanced, where people don't carry wallets around, they carry around their mobile phone, and they do everything on that mobile phone. You can download apps on your phone where you can immediately get the e-fa-piao and get it uploaded into your expense report so that it's then approved by your manager. And it's all done through your phone. So utilizing tools like that is, first of all, your staff will love it, because everybody loves this technologically advanced software systems. They're fascinated by it. They want to download as many apps as possible to learn from them. But it's also going to make your life easier, because once you're aware of these tools and these software systems, you're going to get the information and the data faster, and your staff will be willing to do it, versus going the traditional route of Excel sheets, PowerPoint presentations, Word documents, whatever else it might be. Not that I don't think those things are important. I think they are, but you have to be willing to adapt yourself to the Chinese market, the way the Chinese work, if you are looking to get the proper data points.
And, we're not saying, you go into a new market and you need to adapt all your internal procedures. I'd see it more differently, as Christina pointed out. I'd see it actually as an opportunity for the whole organization to kind of make a level up on the digital infrastructure. We like it, we don't like it. I don't, ask that question at that point of time. But really, what we've seen in the last couple of years, at 6, 7, 8 years ago, I started laughing at my friends in Nanjing when they came along with, I paid a meal with WeChat, and I was like, what is this? And now what, like 7 years afterwards, also Alipay landed in, or sorry, not Alipay, but Apple Pay landed in Central Europe. So what I see is actually, in terms of digital stuff, generally speaking, it's more that actually China has started to take the leadership, at least when we compare it to Europe or to Central Europe. Yeah. And also about the other things, I see and I feel when many of you say, but we know we have this process and it's there, and we can't just change. Yes, you can. And yes, you must. Because it's simple. Are you really going to be messing up one of your strategic markets because you don't fancy to change an Excel sheet? I just don't think, it stands to reason. I just don't think you have the option. You need to find something that's simple and that's being used. And then when you have that, you get the data. And then when you have the data and you see that, for example, your distribution partner is actually only doing sales in Beijing because they're Beijing based. Next time you have a discussion with them and they say, but we need exclusivity for all of China, is like, honestly, like, you're only selling in Beijing, which is, big city, 50 million people, all right. But all of China is 1.3 billion people. So I think it's just, it's very difficult to make some discussions properly and to do them well if you don't have data and if you're just blind.
Yes.
We're having this shared client at the moment where they're starting up in China. We found the general manager for them in Shanghai. They're setting up the office and so on and so forth. And from the very beginning, all the decisions are being pushed to that person. And we're having stomachache with that because, you need to take a bit of ownership in the headquarters. Somebody needs to wear that China hat. If you don't wear that China hat, I've read a couple of years ago, passion builds business. If you have nobody in your team who's got that passion to build the China business, that person in China, he will also need support. Your team in China will also need support. You need to facilitate that in easy ways. At least that's my perspective.
I think it's very easy to blame somebody if the China business doesn't go well.
Yeah.
My philosophy has changed in 17 years. Somebody makes a mistake. Okay, my first thought process is, okay, how am I going to improve this now? How am I going to, I don't want to focus on the blaming. I'll deal with that a little bit later. Let's now fix it and move forward so we don't forget what our ultimate goal is. Right?
Learn fast.
And obviously the Western way of thinking is, okay, somebody messed up. We've got to blame that person. We've got to take action on that person versus looking at the business unit and saying, okay, how are we going to fix this immediately, overnight, to make sure that we actually move forward with the organization.
I mean, just maybe let's put it in different perspective. I don't have a slide for that, but just, picture you're in an area that grows, 10%, 15% a year in China. Are you really going to be, playing the blame game? You need to make sure that you actually just, have time to breathe and catch up and do and deliver.
Exactly.
Versus going around and saying, hey, who messed this one up? Because that's quite a growth, 10 to 15% a year, and that's nothing special. And when we go to maybe Germany or maybe UK, we're talking about normally, or in many areas, just much smaller numbers.
Right.
So it's more about maintaining or increasing a bit, whereas in China or in APAC, quite often it's about kind of going the whole 9 yards.
Right.
But I'm trying to kind of hop on the next slides that we also get a bit of a sneak peek on this and that. So coming back to this whole alignment topic, to go into it a bit more and also to talk a bit about with Christina, what he did for her. In all essence, in a short nutshell, what we really do is to say, where are you? Where are you from a revenue perspective, from a communication, from team perspective, from being in the market perspective? Have you been in China for 20 years, or you just thinking about it or starting to think about it, or, and depending on that, and depending on your organization size and your maturity and your business team, there'll be different things that kind of need to be covered. And then we look, 3-4 years into the future and say, where do we want to go? And in many cases, we're seeing quite strong growth because there simply is a lot of potential. And just like Christina had pointed out at the beginning, what we see is a lot of organizations that say, wow, and we do this and we do that, and then we have all the euros. That part, most of the organizations can cover. When it then becomes difficult or slow or both, is actually how to get there. Even small steps. I mean, when you've done things 100 times, then what is impossible for the other person becomes a small step. So for Christina or me, setting up a new company is not the largest roadblock. You just need to do it and then you move on. But it's not, it's do it.
Hiring the first person isn't necessarily the first roadblock when you've done it 100 times. It's
exactly.
Actually, for me now, maintaining that staff, that relationship, making sure they don't run off to another organization. So it's looking at all the various aspects of your current status quo, looking 3 years down the line. What do you want to achieve? What are your revenue targets? What's your headcount target? What is your ultimate goal in the Chinese market from your business perspective, right? And it's outlining that literally bullet point next to bullet point. I've got 5 people today. In 3 years, I'd like us to be at least 20 people because my revenue today is X and I want my revenue to be Y, right? And then Manfred, I'll let you continue.
How did that, no, I mean, and it's good. I'm always happy if you jump in. How did that feel for you, Christina? Like, I mean, we did it, right? We did that session because you came to me and said, look, yes. I mean, I would like to see it. And I completely agree because I have that same attitude and that same feeling that, it's nice that you tell me it's nice, but let me experience it and then I get my own opinion. So how was it for you?
I don't normally look 3 years down the line. I normally look 12 to 24 months down the line. I have a shorter perspective. So it was very interesting to just have that thinking process of what does Woodburn look like 3 years down the line? I haven't thought about that. Where do I want to be? Where could I foresee us to be? And I think it was interesting to do the status quo and the year 2024, what that looks like. But I think what was more interesting for me was to go into the in-depth analysis of how am I going to achieve that? What am I going to do to bring me to that stage in 3 years? I already have the idea of how am I going to get there in 1 year? How am I going to get there to reach the 2-year goal? But I've never gone further than that. And I think that's something in such a fast-paced market like China, what you do in your first year to achieve that first year goal will probably be very different than what you do if you're trying to achieve that 3rd year goal.
The funny thing that I find, Christina, is I don't know how that, if that rings a bell with you or not, is there's something fundamentally different when we use a 3-year perspective. You know, we can be a bit more brave, but also we see a bit further down the line than we normally do. And we also understand that in order to be there in 3 years, maybe we need to do that tiny small thing, but do it now. Yes, in order to actually start that, you know, Correct. That move towards that result.
Correct. Now I had not done it in the format that Manfred has outlined, but actually already in 2020, due to COVID, being a service provider that helps foreign investors go into the Chinese market, 2020 did not look like a very good year for me at all. So already in Q1 of 2020, I was sitting down and saying, if I look at the next point in your graph, Manfred, is I was saying, what are my current obstacles? Well, my biggest obstacle and challenge is the fact that no foreign investor is going to make an investment into China in 2020. Who would? They're going to try and save their business at home, right? And then, you know, I thought, okay, well, what's the opportunity? Well, the opportunity is that China's growing. It's still going to grow. It will still be a market for foreign investors. So what can I do in this period where nothing's coming in? What can I do to reach that potential, right? So my first thought was, I'm going to be at the front of everybody's mind when they think about China. I'm going to bombard people with emails. I'm going to talk about China in the best, most positive light. I'm going to say how easy it is to get into the market, how easy it is to incorporate, to give people a sense of, or to eliminate the fear, basically, from going into the market. And that's how I initiated my campaigns, right? So the goal of the workshop is actually to really go in detail with, again, all the decision makers in relation to what everyone perceives as the current obstacles, and the current challenges, and what every person sees as the market opportunities and the business potential. And I think what Manfred has been telling me is that you will have decision makers that have different feelings about what the obstacles are, what the potential is. And that's the point of getting everybody on board with that discussion, to highlight exactly what everybody is actually really thinking, putting it down in the workshop on paper and analyzing that.
And you know, sometimes it's also, I mean, it's a very human thing, right? If you have the feeling that that obstacle with your current team is just too big to cross, then, you know, you push it aside. However, if you then have the feeling, you get to know Christina, and you have the feeling, oh, now we can actually cross the river, cross the bridge, or however you want to put it, then that changes. And the workshop, to a certain degree, you know, it has the same tone to it, because it's, you know, I'm a firm believer, even now in COVID times, of, you know, we need to create perspectives. We need to look forward. No matter how the situation looks like, you still need to look into the future. And this is what we kind of crystallize in the workshop, to say, you know, I understand there is challenges, but, you know, 99 out of 100 can be overcome. If the challenges you don't want, you know, that's fine, that's different. However, you know, let's look at the things that we have, and then let's see how to go about it. And again, you know, let's look at data. And if we don't have it, let's get it. And this is, you know how it is. Sometimes certain things as an external is, you just see it clearer, because you don't see the internal dynamics. You don't know how long it takes if X needs to talk to Y, and Y needs to, you know, have another lunch or 3 with Z in order to then come up with and so on and so forth, we can, condense that. And then also, if needed, speed things up.
Right. I think also the advantage of doing this workshop with Manfred and I is the fact that we are external parties. We're neutral. We're not going to choose one decision maker over another. That's not the objective of the workshop. But second, because of the experience that we have in the market, and also we have sector experiences. We have clients from a variety of industries, a variety of sectors. So we are seeing already what companies are doing in the market. We've seen the mistakes that many of those companies have made, and we've also seen the successes of what many of those companies have done. So when we are going through the workshop, we ourselves will raise questions that maybe you've never even thought of, or make suggestions on things to make you think, that there are alternatives and it's not always black and white. You need to have this external influence. And whether that's Manfred, me, somebody else, you need to have that neutral party to aid you.
And, we'll also make things simpler. As I said, it's a little bit like riding a bicycle. If you've never done it, it might be a bit tricky. But if you've did that for the last 20 years, it's not so difficult. So especially when, things feel quite, insurmountable challenges, then, we can come in and put things in perspective and say, look, but we need this, and this. And this is where kind of, we're coming from the workshop to the roadmap where we say, look, what needs to be done about it, which is then kind of a phase afterwards, using the terminology that Christina brought up, to say, how are we going to go about it? Because it's not just, it's not just about the goal. Obviously, you need to break things down. And then we need to see, what kind of speed can we go with you? What kind of speed are you willing to go? What kind of speed does the market require you to go in order to actually be successful in China? Because you're European or because your Asian competitors are moving, faster or slower than you do. And that then kind of, are some of the factors that determine what needs to be done. And this is, again, that is kind of going into the, if we try to use this slide here, this is what we're focusing on, is clarity in the first phase and in first step, get clarity. Because if you see, this is how it looks like, and these are the 2 or the 3 options that we have, then you can think about them. And then when we, start putting them into place, it becomes also, you see ahead, you've got visibility for a couple of quarters, depending, maybe even for a couple of years, on that's this phased approach that Christina talked about, where we say, look, first we establish a small team. First we see if sales is working well. Then we see that, sales is working well. The cash flow is developing positively. So from organic cash flow, then we can, start building the team and so on and so forth. And I think this is what, from my experience, what especially European management teams need is to kind of see how things are turning out. And then we can, early on change that and discuss it and already know how to react then when the time has come and say, well, now we're adding 2 salespeople, or to say, well, no, we're not going to go into phase 2 until we have reached this this financial goal, or and so on and so forth.
Exactly. I think, do you have the slide with the roadmap?
Which one do you want to see? This one? No.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
I think I think it's the one after.
Do you want to see the roadmap document, or do you want to see the roadmap document, right?
Yeah, like the timeline. I like the timeline one.
Yeah.
I think to put things in a concrete, to show you guys actually what would materialize from this workshop is an actual timeline. So here we've got, so Manfred has it up.
So this is
the roadmap.
Yeah. So this is the roadmap document.
So this is the beauty of what comes out of this workshop. is an actual roadmap, which based on looking at your existing obstacles, taking a look at the potential opportunity, creating a phased plan for the Chinese market. So it could very well be, okay, phase one is setting up a company. You could say phase two is hiring a GM, phase three, and putting timelines to those things, right? And understanding exactly what your action points are going to be for each of those stages. Creating a business plan is fundamental going to China. This workshop tool is actually creating that business plan for you, if you haven't been able to actually put pen to paper. Although, I just want to highlight, like Manfred said, you can't go into this workshop without having data points.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is where I guess Christina and me are both kind of quite happy with the tools, is that there is an extreme focus on simplicity, right? So, for example, we go ahead and say, in Q1, we just set up the company, and in Q2, we hired a GM. Now, obviously, if we did this workshop in November last year and you are in a hurry, then, that could be something like this. You could condense it and make it smaller. Or obviously also in the other way, if you then, because this is a working document, right? You use it, you review it, you go to it again and again. Maybe, for example, you find out, well, we didn't manage to do all these things in Q1, we go to Q2. Now, again, if this was just going from Germany to Austria, from Austria to Germany, from Austria to Switzerland, and so on and so forth, people would still appreciate the simplicity, but there would be nothing to it. But because we're going into China, there's all these roadblocks in our head. And this is where I personally believe, and what we see also with the clients, that they're appreciating the tool a lot because it brings this clarity. And then when we go to this point here, we say, well, which providers do we have as, setting up a company? We could be talking about lawyer A, we could be talking about Woodburn, we could be talking about, XYZ. And those are the things that then, help you, that speed things up. Because if we leave those things to the client, then maybe, we're adding 2 weeks that are completely unnecessary.
Correct.
And this is somehow where, if you have the experience of doing all this in-house, great, then, do it, move ahead. If you don't, in one way or the other, what we see is that if you want to move with the speed that the local market requires, and this is what it's about. It's not about me being very loud about going fast. It's just that, the local market is developing extremely fast, and your window, it's not as long as in Austria or in Central Europe or in UK. It's not. So if you don't want to miss the window, you got to be fast. And, also, if you just want to look at China, maybe it's also to very quickly identify and understand, actually, this is not a strategic market. I'm happy with that output as well. I'm just extremely unhappy about clients having a huge strategic market in front of their face, not finding the time to do anything, not having the tool to structure the information, and then, 3 years later, looking out the back of their car and saying, oh, that would have been a good opportunity. That is something that I personally find really frustrating. And I guess this is also where Christina and me have a very different attitude, where we simply say, do your homework, look at it. Let's look at it together. And, if it is a strategic market, let's move. If it's not, pass. Go into other markets,
Exactly.
Could be Indonesia, could be India, could also be just, I don't know, the Czech Republic, depending on what you are doing.
Yeah. I also think one thing that Manfred and I have been talking about in relation to this tool is, for me anyhow, I want it to be a tool that holds you accountable. So when you are typing in phase one that you're going to set up a company and it needs to be done by Q1 2021, what we actually want to do is develop a relationship with you that make you accountable for it. Do it. Actually execute it. It's all good and well by typing this into the tool and having a beautiful document that comes out as a wonderful roadmap. But we also want to make you accountable for that. If China, like Manfred said, is a strategic market you want to get into and you want to do it, you have to be made accountable for it and actually execute it. This is going to provide clarity, transparency, but it should also act as a document that keeps you accountable for moving from phase 1 to phase 2 to phase 3. Otherwise, in 3 years, you're going to still be at the starting point. You won't have moved anywhere, right?
And then, obviously, like the things that we talked about before is that, when here in Q1 2021, then, in Q1 2022, 1 year later, revenue is already looking way different because you have set up that local entity, right? And this is what obviously we can also, do that differently and say this is first half year and then second half year, and then we can, look at 3 years. That is just a technicality, but what is important, I think, is that perspective to the future.
Mm-hmm.
And with it also the thought process that goes on about, if we want to be doing, now at the moment, we're just doing, I don't know, 200,000 euros in China or 500 or 1 million. And then 3 years down the line, we want to be doing double that. We want to be doing 3 times that. And for those of you that are newbies, this is nothing special really, because the growth rates support that. It's not us dreaming about how we would like reality to be. This is at the moment how the reality looks like in that market. But also we see a lot of people missing out on that because they just, they look at how would we grow in Europe. And in Europe, obviously we will grow differently, very differently. Exactly. In Europe, you start throwing these numbers, then people kick you out of the meeting.
If you are in Europe, the US, or UK, you would be growing more conservatively than you would if you would be in China.
Exactly.
And yesterday, Manfred, just so you know, one of the questions that popped in the registration form was, I'm talking to a lot of TP partners in China for cross-border e-commerce and e-commerce, and I get the sensation that they're over-promising. And my response to the question was, isn't it good if they're over-promising? Isn't it a positive that they have the belief that they can do more versus do less? The question, or what you need to make sure though, is that as the TP partner is initiating the project, that they are following that KPI of the over-promising, right? And if they don't achieve it, exit the relationship. Don't be reliant on that partner. But if somebody is or you get the impression they're over-promising, that's not a bad thing for the Chinese market because the growth rate is there.
I think that is an interesting example because especially on the e-commerce side, it's quite easy to get data. And whether you're selling beer or whether you're selling high-tech equipment for, let's say, the semiconductor industry because they're growing like mad, or even if you're just selling equipment to the farming industry because they're also seeing quite some mechanization and some growth in that field, set up a structure and fill out the data. The key question for me is like the segment you're in, what is the average growth in that segment? If you're doing 6% and that segment is doing 12,
then something's
then,
wrong.
well, obviously,
Yeah.
On the other hand side, if you're doing 10% and that segment is doing 7 or 8, and well, and this is the key thing for me. I do not like the comparison with the overall GDP. That can give you a first idea. There is
Correct.
so many segments at the moment that are growing like mad in China, but we need to look specifically at that segment in order to see and understand, how do we compare? And, also maybe just look at your European competitors to start with and see kind of, where have they been 3 years ago? Where are they now? In order to get an idea on what is happening and what is going on. And also to, no matter whether we like the numbers or not, just to conclude, at the moment where we are in Europe, I see a lot of clients that say, was it not for the Chinese market, we would need to be firing people. Because last year they still managed to, either grow or to actually grow quickly in China. And this year again is also a very different situation than Europe. So it can become a strategic second, third leg that is helping your company kind of on a global scale and on a perspective, as opposed to just one market, how you would maybe look like at a small European company, at a small European country, that could be just one of your markets.
Mm.
Christina, do you also want me to kind of show the slides a little bit on how it looks like? I think that might not be necessary, right?
I don't think it's necessary. I mean, we're already over the 1 hour time frame, so I think maybe we just let's conclude up.
Good.
Let me just get the control back, and then I'll finish.
Sure.
Finish up. Let me share my screen. Manfred, you want to go? Yes. Let me share my screen now.
Is it good? Is it working, Christina?
Yep, it's working.
Okay.
There we go. So what I wanted to finish off with today's presentation was a conclusion about what we want you to achieve through this tool. So this is what we're hoping that companies, if they go through this workshop, what they're going to achieve. The first is, obviously, we've mentioned it 100 times, it's clarity. We want you to have clarity amongst all of the decision makers. We want you to have transparency. So both clarity and transparency are critical in order to be able to go to that mode of execution. Unity. We want all the decision makers to be on the same playing field. Everybody is in agreement, or even in some cases, maybe semi-agreement, on the direction in which the company should move forward in the Chinese market. Accountability. I mentioned this at the end. The point of the tool is not only to provide the clarity, the transparency, and the unity, but it is there to provide you action points to make you then also accountable for the execution. It's all well and good to do this workshop, sit there for 90 minutes, go through it with Manfred and I, us giving you advice and whatnot, but then you not actually executing that to the next stage. Manfred and I are developing a program where we can help with that execution based on our services that we offer, and the type of accountability you want to be held by, whether that's through a master workshop or whether that's simply just working with each of us individually, however that might be. But you have to be held accountable for that execution. Decision-making ability. We see that the biggest roadblock is being able to make decisions, and to be able to make decisions quickly in this fast-paced market. So we want that tool to be there for you to be able to make those decisions. And obviously, if you keep a phased approach for 3 years, you may have to pivot on occasion. And like Manfred was highlighting, it's a working tool. It's a working document that should be looked at frequently and amended and updated often enough. But you have to be able to make decisions throughout this 3-year plan. Consistency, my motto for 2021. I have 2 mottos. One is consistency and one is momentum. And that probably fits in super nicely with China's growth rate and whatnot. But I also see that just in developing my own business, I need to be consistent. I need to keep momentum. So momentum was the other one. If you want to achieve your goal and objective in 3 years that you're setting forth within this working tool, then you have to be consistent and you have to maintain momentum. If you are not on that green light and you're not ready to just push forward and move forward and make decisions, you're going to always be at the red light, and it's going to be stop, go, stop, go, stop, go, stop. You're not going to move forward. And it's only going to make the people that are in China that are helping you to grow, they're going to actually get frustrated with you. And in worst case scenarios, terminate working with you.
Exactly. And also to touch on that, sorry, Christina, also, if you're stop, go, you cannot expect them to perform fully. You cannot expect them to turn the potential in the Chinese market into real revenue for you, or at least not full potential, because they sense that, you kind of have one foot on the brake. And that's not good. That's not helpful.
Absolutely. So I wanted to highlight at the end just a story, like a client, both of us mutually, we've been communicating with them. I actually referred them on to Manfred. And I just want to tell you a little bit their story without mentioning company names. We highlighted it a little bit on Tuesday. Basically, it's a company out of Europe. They're already working with a distributor in China, and they've been doing so for maybe 3-4 years, I believe, if not a little bit longer. And they, or let me put it another way, the APAC sales manager is not happy with the Chinese results. They feel that feels there's so much more potential in the Chinese market, and that the distributor is just not doing his job to fulfill that. And he's been analyzing himself what other sales channels and opportunities are existing by getting data points, whether that's finding other potential distributors, finding other types of sales channels, whatever it might be. After talking with me, and then eventually also then speaking with Manfred, the realization that I actually openly said to him was, I just don't feel like you are in alignment with the owner of the company. The roadblock for you to move forward is the owner. And I think the owner needs to have somebody, you both need to get on a call with someone neutral.
Both the owner and the general manager.
Oh, so yeah, so the three.
Yeah.
So you need to get on this workshop to get an alignment, and for you to be able to vocalize in a clear way what you're seeing on a day-to-day basis, which is your job, right? The discussion went on that actually, they're ready to pivot. They're ready to look for new sales channels. They have ideas on how to do that. And one of them is to hire a BD manager or sales manager, whatever you want to call this individual, to be based in China to open the door to these new options. Then the owner comes in and says, well, why don't we just have the distributor find this person, hire this person, and sit in their office? And my reaction was like, what? Would you do that in the UK? Would you do that in the US? You're not happy with the existing distributor, but you want the distributor to hire someone, choose that person, have them sit in their office, know exactly what the new sales channels might be that they're finding, or even become manipulate that person to do what you want, right? Instead of working in the best interest of the actual company. I said, why aren't you separating that completely? Continue your relationship with your distributor. He's obviously making sales. You're not happy with it, the growth rate of it, but have this BD person that you hire, you choose, you control, sitting somewhere else in China, so you grasp a bigger market share, and he finds the new sales channels, right? So it took a lot of discussion between this and back and forth communication and whatnot, but eventually they agreed that they would have not done this in their home jurisdiction. They would have not done this type of business model with the person sitting in the distributor's office. And so I considered it as a success because they are actually in the stage of recruiting somebody, and they're taking control of that recruitment process. So, they're taking the workshop, they're taking the discussion that was made on that workshop, they're looking at the phase plan of where they want to be in 3 years. And they've come to the realization that in order to do that, phase one will be to hire somebody who works for them. Manfred, I don't know if you want to add anything on.
No, I mean, it's exactly this one. And I think the other thing that just, came to my mind again when I thought about that client and that situation is just that some discussions, if you've worked for a company or an organization for a little bit of a time, and the people, the personalities, their thinking, their behaviors, it's just not easy to have some discussions when there's different opinions on the table. Point A, point B, without having the facts kind of at hand to actually persuade them and to convince them that this is not smart. It's also tricky to go into these discussions and then you stall. And I guess this is where that's why the APAC manager in that scenario, he jumped at it because he saw his chance that, finally he could actually reach alignment, point A. And point B, we also managed to get rid of quite a few, thoughts that were just in people's heads. And, again, that's our job. We've been doing that for such a long time. So we're here to, point out these paths and say, look, you can take this path, you can take that path. That is faster, that is less risk, that requires more money. That is from my own personal, perspective, that's what we're here for, to help with that. And then you have the clarity, and then you see, there's these three paths, and then you can choose one, whatever is the one that is most suitable for the kind of organization you're in, and also for the ownership structure. You're having a huge investor at your back. That probably means financial resources are easier to get as if you are a really, really small SME with an awesome product. It's different realities, and different realities require then also different paths forward. But what we're really saying is, it's not as difficult as you think. And also in that scenario, for some people, I think, Christina, you're pointing this out often enough, but still many people, they think, how do I get the first person? And yes, obviously, we're headhunters, so you find them through us. Christina is employing them. So, you don't always need to set up the company in China in order to have the team. Where Christina and me are thinking the same way is, first foot forward, keep moving. Because why do you want to set up an expensive structure in China if maybe 18 months later, you figure out that actually there is not enough market, or the market is too price sensitive, or you don't have the products for the market, or you don't want to adapt for the market.
Or the market is maybe still too immature for your product.
Exactly.
Which was a case actually for a client of mine a few years back. Yeah.
Super. Christina, shall we still ask who would be interested?
Yes. So what Manfred and I would love to know is, before we get to the Q&A, is obviously what was your biggest takeaway from today? And if you don't want to type that, at least type for us, yes or no, would you be interested to learn more about the alignment and orientation workshop or strategy workshop tool? Type in yes or no either into the chat section or the Q&A section. If you say yes, Manfred and I will be sending you more details about it, so you have more information on it, or even how to get into the workshop. It is a one-to-one workshop, meaning we don't add we don't add 2 or 3 companies in. It's basically a workshop between us and yourselves.
Absolutely.
Right?
This is absolutely discrete, just with one organization.
Absolutely. So if you are interested, please say yes or no, either into the Q&A or into the chat section. Please do that. It just helps us to know. Just type yes, no. And then we can get started on the Q&A if there are any questions that have popped in. I'm going to open both boxes. Nothing, it seems like nothing's popped in at this stage. Nothing so far.
So we've clarified all questions within the time that we spoke, Christina. That's perfect, isn't it?
Amazing. All right. Well, so here we go. Boban has a question. Do you have a value chain model?
If you could maybe clarify a little bit on that one. What's kind of the company or the...
It's do you have a value chain model to assess the financials ahead of any investment? Go ahead, Manfred.
We don't have a model per se, but obviously we have, depending on the industries. So depending on the industries, we're seeing quite a lot, and can give them guidance. But that'd be interesting to kind of see and understand more about your specific reality.
So my feeling is this: if you want to assess any of the financials, you need to have data points on your fingertips. So my suggestion would be to look at your competitors, look at their pricing, look at their market share, to be able to then understand where you stand in the market with the product that you're looking to bring in. But without that data point from your competitors, it's very difficult to assess financials.
And Boban, I'm happy, you know, to also kind of look at your case in detail then later on, or you reach out directly to Christina to chat about it directly, because then we could probably kind of see more what we have and what we don't have, and how to get there. Yeah.
All right. Is there anything else that's coming in that people want to speak on? Please don't be shy. Otherwise, Manfred, maybe in the chat section, you want to add in how people can reach you. You want to add your email or your WeChat?
Sure. Just typing that in now. So there's this one.
Perfect.
Then we have the, but I guess you're putting that out afterwards as well, right? Are
Yeah.
you sending out the follow-up to the?
I will, and I'll be copying you in the email as well.
Yeah.
So people have it,
So
but just in case people want our emails.
Yeah.
I'll have my WeChat as well. Bowen was saying something for later. How do we get segment growth information or data points? So there are market research companies that actually produce data points specific to what you're looking for, whether it's a competitor benchmarking, whether it is, like you said, segmentation markets, price benchmarking, all of that type of stuff. So there are on the ground companies that can get those data points for you. My only suggestion is when working with research companies, you've got to try and be as specific as possible with them to get those data points, because I take it as a personal thing from my side. I hate to read research reports. I don't plan on reading a 100-page research report. If I try to get data points, I'm very clear and very precise on specifically what I'm trying to get at that period in time.
Yes.
And either I do that work internally, or I do that work externally through a company that's going to do it for me.
And I mean, also to add on that one, you know, I mean, there's again, I'd love to take this kind of into personal consideration to customize it more, but for a very first, you know, quick stuff, obviously, if it's an online product, you just use any of the kind of Chinese online services and try and get a first idea there. If we're talking B2B investment or whatnot, then still, you know, go on Baidu, the Chinese Google, and see what you can find out. You know, just to get quick and dirty and quick, really, focus on that one before you start spending too much on any sort of market research, or again, you know, spend 3 months time before you then actually have something, and that might not be what you're looking for.
So I'm going to talk about the time frame, Manfred, because this is again where that's what I hate about these big research projects, is that it takes time to get them done, and then the research companies focus so much on making it look pretty. I don't care that it looks pretty, and I don't care to read, again, a 150-page report. Most of the time, if you reach out to research companies and you say, I just want very simply a benchmarking study done on my competitors, they could get that data to you within 2 to 3 weeks, if not 2 weeks, so 10 working days. So from a time perspective, if you know what data you need in order to progress further, the timeline is not critical at that point, because you're being very specific with the provider who's going to do it for you. But if you say on a macroeconomic level, I want to know about the beer market in China, well, in that case, they're going to create a book for you to read about the beer market in China, right? So you have to be quite specific on that.
And I think also there, I mean, generally, you know, when you're at that stage where you really don't have anything in China, then I guess the point that I said before, you know, simply go on the Chinese Google, but also reaching out to, in Britain, it would be the CBBC, In Germany would be the AHK that is kind of also having offices in China to see, you know, look how, you know, how can you support? Can you create a couple of contacts there? You know, don't mind getting your hands dirty. I'm not saying that's the only way to do it, but I'm saying, you know, at least if you're going for a full-blown market research report, add a couple of personal calls to it and talk with a couple of people on the ground to see and to check and to verify if this is actually what it is or not.
Fantastic. Guys, we're going to leave it there because we've hit 7 p.m. China time, 12 p.m. Central European time. Just to finish off, my next webinar for Woodburn is on the 9th of March about the China Profit Accelerator. So giving you tips on how to look at your financials related to China and how to basically improve them, analyze them, and understand them. If you guys are interested, Manfred is also going to be joining our April webinar series. And he's going to bring in a client actually who's going to be talking about bridging the gap of communication between the head office and the China subsidiaries. So if you are interested, stay tuned for the April webinar series because he will be joining then. In the meantime, I want to thank everyone for joining me for this series. Appreciate all the attendance and hope to see you again in March. Take care and goodbye.
Thank you so much. Take care. Bye-bye.